So I'm glad this came up, toxic masculinity. And I like what you're saying about it, Jackson. And there's pieces of it that I like, too. Toxic masculinity. So we're looking at traditional masculinity. It's dangerous, it's poisonous, it's toxic. And to me, the question is, toxic for who? Right? Toxic for who, exactly? And that's a question that I'm not sure always comes up. And I think it's an important question. Put my watch out here. So we look at toxic, okay, so what's sexism? Okay, so what are the negative consequences for men? Okay, I gotta be tough. And I can't cry. Okay, that's about it, right? Gotta be tough and I can't cry. Now women, 1 in 4 chance of being sexually assaulted before they're 18. 1 in 3 in their lifetime. 1 in 3 women throughout the US will be beaten by the man she's in relationship with. And Jackson talked a little bit about this, about what do they need to do. They're going out to their car after work and they've got their keys stuck between their fingers in case some guy attacks them. Right? That's who's raping them, that's who's beating them. Men, they know. Right? I make women, you women in the audience, you make 60 to 80 cents on my dollar. Yeah. So if you're women of color, indigenous women, it's more like 60 or 70 cents on my dollar. A white woman, you get 80 cents on my dollar. But the key word here is on my dollar. Right? So I start listing what are the negative consequences for men of sexism. It's about this much. And then I start listing the negative consequences to women. I can't even, right? We got to fill up this thing. And so if we're going to do a presentation, we're going to talk about sexism and the negative consequences of sexism, and we want to bring in all genders. Let's say I got an hour and a half to talk about it, doing a presentation. Okay, so I'm going to give a minute, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes about the negative consequences to men, because it's a fair representation of reality. And then the rest of the time is going to be, how's this impacting women's lives? That's fair. That's just. That's gender justice, right? It's so amazing that always the privileged people, we want to spend a lot of time focusing on them, which is really nice for me. I'm a straight, white, middle-class male. Love it. It's fantastic, really. It's not fair. I mean, half of you in this room pay for that, but it's great for me. And so when we talk about toxic masculinity, again, who's it toxic to? Now, one thing I'm seeing in the last 5 years especially is when we talk about toxic masculinity, a lot of the focus goes on men and boys and how they're raised and how toxic masculinity is bad for boys and how sexism is bad for boys too. Now this is great as a privileged person. That's like saying racism is bad for white people. Great. Then we don't have to talk about my privilege and my power at all, the benefits of racism. Guys, sexism is bad for guys too, so let's focus on how we can rechange and healthy masculinity for boys. So they feel better about themselves. So they're happier. Great. Focus on them as a victim too. Great. Because then we don't have to talk about all the benefits, the privilege, and the entitlements I have. Then I don't have to give them up. So we're using this strategy to engage boys and men about and we're engaging them through their self-interest. Boys, and guys, sexism is bad for you too. So it's worth it to you because of your self-interest to stop sexism. Now, the problem is that this is the same motivator as sexism and oppression, is self-interest. That's what motivates, that's the foundation of sexism and other racist oppressions, all the oppressions, is my self-interest. Now, if my primary motivator as a guy to end sexism is my self-interest, one of the first things I'm going to do, and maybe I have some compassion, like Russ is saying, right? And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bump into my privilege immediately. My benefits I get from sexism, I'm going to bump right into them. If it's not equal, I'm up here, women are down here. If it's going to be equal, I'm going to lose some stuff. And that's one of the first things I'm going to encounter, and that was one of the first things I did encounter as a white guy, as a male, and change, it was my benefits, and was I willing to give them up? And if my primary motivation was my self-interest, well, no, why would I? I'm going to bump into it? No, I'm just going to sit down and relax. in my silence, in my privilege, and no one will even pay attention. No one will even notice. It'd be no problem. It's like something as simple as you go to the bar. Let's say you just played sports, hockey or softball or whatever, a bunch of guys, and you go to the bar. The waitress comes over, gives you the beers, and she's walking away, and one guy says to the other, ooh, I'd like to jump that. You don't even know what to do with it, right? They're goofing around. Is he even willing to say and challenge that comment? Jump that? No, isn't that interesting? Sex, jump, that. It's not even jump her. It's jump that. Is he willing to challenge that friend? Well, part of what happens is if he challenges that friend about making this joke, then he doesn't get to make those jokes himself ever again with his friends. And they're just playing, right? Is he willing to even give up that little benefit of making sexist jokes about women, what we like to do with their bodies, to bond with their male friends? Is he even willing to give that up? And if he says something, what's he worried about? He's worried about maybe the guys won't like me anymore. Meanwhile, the women are worried about when I go out to the parking lot after work, am I going to be followed by this guy? Am I going to be raped, right? So it's the benefits. What about porn? What about just porn? Here's one really easy benefit. Am I willing to stop using porn because of how much violence is involved in pornography? You know that majority of the women in porn don't want to be there? You guys know that? There's a gun off stage, off camera, at their head. They're forced, they're coerced, they don't want to be there. So if I'm getting off on porn, if they don't want to be there and there's sex, there's no consent, we're talking about rape. I'm getting off on rape. Do I care? Will I stop? I don't know. Will I stop going to strip clubs? I had to ask myself this. Will I stop going to strip clubs? Will I stop using porn? How about prostituting women? Buying women, right? Am I willing to just, how about even like at a meeting? Okay, workplace. You're at a meeting, there's 10 people in the meeting, 3 guys. We get 60% of the time though, right? Talk, because we're guys, hey. Am I willing just to step back and just go, listen to women? Make space here? Take the 10% that, I'm one of 10, right? Am I even willing to do that? As simple as that. It's like this man box. I don't know if you've heard about the man box. It's been out there for a long time. It's like we're stuck in the man box. All the guys are stuck in the man box. If we step out of the man box, we're going to get slapped back in by other guys. That's what keeps us in the man box? No. That's not what keeps us in the man box. It's all the goodies in the man box. That's what keeps us in the man box. There was a guy I knew in University of Illinois, and he Men Against Violence Against Women's group. He's working with a lot of fraternities. And MAVO, it's called. And one time, one of the frat boys was outside. It was 2:30 in the morning, and he was throwing empty beer cans at the frat house. F you, Juan. F you, MAVO. F you, Bobby. Right? He's real drunk. It's 2:30 in the morning. His friends come down and grab him and put him to bed, right? Next morning, wake up and say, Frank, what was going on, man? He had been at a party. And this real drunk woman, he said girl, right, was all over him. Come on, baby, you were so hot. Come on, let's do it. But he had seen her stumbling drunk. He actually saw her fall one time. And because he was in MAVO, he knew that he couldn't have sex with her because it wouldn't be sex. It'd be rape. Pissed him off. Now he's in MAVO. Now he can't have sex with drunk women? Damn it. And he's throwing beer cans at the frat house. Damn. And I totally related to that. I totally remember having to give up benefits and being pissed off about it. Totally. Yeah. Now here's the other piece. And he didn't do it. So it pissed him off, but he didn't do it. He didn't, quote unquote, have sex with her, right? So that's character. So what's motivating him? It wasn't self-interest. It was caring about others, right? It's called altruism. Caring about others. If you talk to men, and I've seen that we did this in Minnesota, did a survey of men involved in ending sexism. I've seen this in Washington State. I've seen this in elsewhere. And say, why are you doing this work? And this is what they say. Right? Oh, missing a slide. 2 slides full. But it's all about others, caring about others. That's what makes a difference. And so when this guy, he doesn't like having to give up the benefits, but he doesn't rape her. He could have had sex with her. She's all over him. No one would have said nothing. It would have been fine. She would have woke up in the morning and said, what the hell happened, right? But nothing would have happened to him. But he decided not to. He gave up that benefit. He knows he can't have sex with drunk women anymore. That's stepping out of the man box. That's what stepping out of the man box looks like, is am I willing to give up the privileges and the benefits of the violence? Do I care about women's lives? And will the compassion that Russ is talking about, will that override my privilege? That was the question I had to ask, especially around porn. And this was before videos, much less online. This was like a magazine once in a while. I didn't use it all the time, but it's like, am I willing to give up my pleasure because of how much pain it causes women? Not only women in the life, but also women throughout the culture. And so then it becomes, do I care? What kind of man do I want to be? Right? And that's some of what you were talking about, I think, today, too, on stage, Jackson, about who am I? Who do I want to be? How do I want to be that person? And so I think we need to acknowledge this more and get this out there more. And that when I engage men, I engage them about, one of the first things I do is put on the table is the violence. Here's the reality of women's lives, and here's what you do every day that supports that violence. Whether you're violent or not, how are you like men who beat and rape women, not how are you different. When I did batters group for 10 years, coordinated. The first time I did the group, I thought, oh, this would be really interesting. I've never been abused a woman, so it'd be interesting how these guys, they're men who batter, mandated to this group, it'd be really interesting to see how they're different than me. That's not what was interesting at all. What was interesting is how much I was like men who beat and rape women, not how much I was different from them. And we know this from Me Too, how normalized this is, right? We have iconic males who have been accused and found guilty of sexual assault and sexual harassment routinely throughout the country. It's normal behavior. This is not abnormal male behavior. It's normal behavior. So as men, we get to decide, do we care? And so again, when we start thinking about how we are effective allies with women and gender justice, are we willing to give us some stuff up? I'll just end with this. Am I out of time already? 1 minute? Good. I remember a lot of times people think the way you change social norms is through education and awareness building. But what we know actually from history is it's changing organizational practices and public policies. That's what really changes social norms. Smoking, everyone knew that, you smoke, it's going to cause cancer, who cares? But they changed workplace policies. And then in Minnesota, you can't smoke in public anywhere. If you told somebody in 97 that, you won't be able to smoke in the bar in Minnesota 10 years from now, they would have laughed at you. God, you're nuts. 10 years later, you can't smoke in a bar anymore, right? It's policies, practices. When I was 17, I was in northern Minnesota, northwestern Minnesota, 10 miles south of Canada, in high school. Small town, 2,500 people, Roseville, Minnesota, had long hair. I was one of 12 guys in town with long hair, so everyone thought we were heroin addicts in those days, 73. And I was sitting in the town park, and feminists were called women libbers then instead of feminazis. Called women libbers, and they were talking about equality. And I thought for the first time, it was a nice summer day, I was just hanging out at this town park, I was just thinking, what would it mean to me, really, if men and women were really equal? And within 2 minutes, I had the answer. I'd have to give some shit up. I thought, nah, I don't think so. And I didn't grow another head on my shoulder, made a very moral decision. I didn't grow another head on and I was a nice guy, hung out with girls, and we all partied together and hung out with friends and everything. But now I had more awareness of what a good deal it was to be a guy. So let's not pretend that's not true. Let's speak to the foundations of sexism, racism, heterosexism, on and on and on, all the oppressions. It's about power, it's about control, it's about benefits, it's about privilege, and it's a hell of a good deal. As privileged people, are we willing to give up? We can't give up all our benefits, right? It's not like a coat I can take off, put my privilege, no, but I can give up quite a bit, and then how do I use the ones that are left, just because I'm a guy, to influence change, organizational practice, public policy changes that supports gender justice, support women in the workplace. You know, if I have to compete with women in the workplace, all women, and then even men of color, I'm not getting the next advancement. Right now, I don't have to compete with them. Right? I have to compete with a small minority, so yeah, I'm getting the next advancement. If I have to compete with all the women and guys of color, indigenous men, I'm not getting the next advancement. No. Am I willing to even give that up? Because I believe in fairness, fair play, justice, equality. I want a world of joy and safety and beauty. I get to decide, right? Thanks.